Welcome back, warrior. We are trying to hook this up here. Get ready for our walking with Christ. We're going to read Doctrine and Covenants, section 102. And we're going to get started. We need to do this pretty quickly because we always have something to do after, It's because we always have plans. So that makes sense. Okay, also, I really like my hair like this curled. I used the 1-inch wand or whatever. I think it's a 1-inch wand. Anyway, I really like it this way. It's pretty cute. Okay, so Doctrine and Covenants, section 102, historical background, is this section restored the ancient order of high councils. At this time, the church was growing, and the leadership was the first presidency and the Bishop Edward Partridge and Bishop Newell K. Whitney. It was now time to introduce more structure into the church government, so the Lord restored the high council. One of the purposes of the council was to help handle difficult and complex situations that arose with members during early days of the church. Problems began to arise on a number of topics, yet how to deal with these problems and how to deal with individuals had not been revealed by the Lord. What was the Lord's rule for discipline? Was Joseph Smith, the prophet, always to be at the center of every difficult situation? How was this to work as the church continued to grow? Joseph could not be expected to be the judge on every issue for every person. That makes sense, right? Like, could you imagine if the prophet had to figure out all the problems that everybody has, like personal problems and all these things, Take way too much time. Okay, so Joseph, and this is at the beginning, so even then it would have taken forever. So Joseph would eventually receive a vision from the Lord directing him to organize the president's church council, patterned after the order of councils in ancient days. In this vision, Joseph became aware that Jerusalem was where the council took place and that the apostle Peter presided over this council. Okay, so this section is a little bit different than most in the Doctrine and Covenants because it contains minutes of a meeting rather than a revelation from the Lord. The meeting was held in Kirtland, Ohio, February 17th, 1834. Woo woo, Aquarius. The minutes were recorded by Oliver Cowdery and Orson Hyde, whose signatures are noted at the end of the minutes. The section heading states, the prophet revised the minutes the following day, and the next day, the corrected minutes were unanimously accepted by the High Council as a form of constitution of the High Council of the Church. Okay. And then under the direction of Joseph Smith, verses 30 to 32 were added. They have to do with the Council of the 12 Apostles. So as you study this section, consider how this ancient pattern would eventually become the prototype for future high councils. These minutes reveal how the Lord and the Lord's leaders regard the rights of an individual and their agency. They recognize that they were dealing with the souls of the children of men whom Jesus Christ himself gave his life for. Okay, so something that our Sunday school teacher asked, he said, from the councils that you have been in, what stood out the most, or what is something that you would say about councils? And I rose my hand and said that because I have been in several ward councils, I'm always amazed at how much love and inspiration goes into each one of these councils. I always wish that whatever we discuss in the ward council could be discussed during Sunday school or during Relief Society or during the priesthood meeting, because it's so, or even youth, because it's so important for us to, I think, talk about those issues. And I feel like we don't ever talk about it, like real issues in church. Like, we just talk about all the surface level stuff, and it's more of just like, I have a problem and Jesus helped me through this problem. Like, great. That's really great. But like, get vulnerable and tell us what that problem is so that we can learn from that problem, how you got out of it or how you find peace through it, or, you know what I mean? And during ward councils, I feel like is the only time that people get vulnerable and share like actual stuff. And so I'm sad that we can't learn more in like a more close-knit setting like that than when we're at church. And yeah, I get it. There's like 75 women in Relief Society, and so you can't have that kind of close-knit vulnerability. But I mean, I don't care. I'm all about sharing all the things. I will share every single thing. You know what I mean? I'm like an open book. It just, you can just read all the things. I wear all my emotions on my sleeve. I don't have secrets that I'm trying to hide from people. You know what I mean? So like just that. And I feel like that is what I would want from those meetings, you know, because like that's where I learn how people use Jesus, like are able to use the atonement of Jesus Christ in their lives, how people love Christ and in what ways are they doing that. And anyway, and so the council was always like, ward council was always like my favorite time, even though I was late all the time. Because it was such an eye-opening experience, and it like always blessed my life to learn in that kind of a setting. So here we go. Doctrine and Covenants, section 102. And there are 34 verses. Dude, the other section, what was up with having 101 verses? You know, let's split it up. Okay, so it was a long revelation. Okay, so here's what section 102 says in like the little preface. It says, minutes of the organization of the First High Council of the Church at Kirtland, Ohio, February 17th, 1834. The original minutes were recorded by elders Oliver Cowdery and Orson Hyde. The prophet revised the minutes the following day, and the next day the corrected minutes were unanimously accepted by the High Council as a form and constitution of the High Council of the Church. Verses 30 to 32, having to do with the Council of the 12 Apostles, were added in 1835 under Joseph Smith's direction when this section was prepared for publication in the Doctrine and Covenants. Okay, so here we go. It says, this day, a general council of 24 high priests assembled at the house of Joseph Smith, Jr. by revelation and proceeded to organize the High Council of the Church of Christ, which was to consist of 12 high priests and 1 or 3 presidents as the case might require. Oh, also, ward councils are obviously different than the High Council, because ward councils were where we attended, where sisters would attend, was included the Relief Society president, the Young Women's president, and the primary president. And so, and then sometimes like the young adult representative, which usually from the wards I've been in was a sister. And so yeah, so I was able to participate in those ward councils. But high councils, I think, are different. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure what goes on in those, but I have known from people who have made comments in Sunday school that they are equally, like they express love and mercy, compassion, and all those things during those meetings as well. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? Okay, so then verse 2. The High Council was appointed by revelation for the purpose of setting important difficulties which might arise in the church, which could not be settled by the church or the bishop's council to the satisfaction of the parties. Joseph Smith Jr., Sidney Rigdon, and Frederick G. Williams were acknowledged presidents by the voice of the council, and Joseph Smith Sr., John Smith, Joseph Coe, John Johnson, Martin Harris, John S. Carter, Jared Carter, Oliver Cowdery, Samuel H. Smith, Orson Hyde, Sylvester Smith, and Luke Johnson, high priests, were chosen to be a standing council for the church by the unanimous voice of the council. Okay, so John Taylor says this: high councils were organized for the adjustment of all matters of difficulty, for the correction of incorrect doctrine, for the maintenance of purity and correct principles among the saints, and for the adjudication of all general matters pertaining to Israel. Okay, verse 4. The above named counselors were then asked whether they accepted their appointments and whether they would act in that office according to the law of heaven, to which they all answered that they accepted their appointments and would fill their offices according to the grace of God bestowed upon them. The number composing the council who voted in the name and for the church in appointing the above named counselors were 43 as follows: 9 high priests, 17 elders, 4 priests, and 13 members. Okay, so that's apparently who it consisted of. Okay, 6 voted that the High Council cannot have power to act without 7 of the above named counselors or their regularly appointed successors are present. These 7 shall have power to appoint other high priests whom they may consider worthy, capable to act in the place of absent counselors. Voted that whenever any vacancy shall occur by the death, removal from office for transgression, or removal from the bounds of this church government of any one of the above named counselors, it shall be filled by the nomination of the president or presidents and sanctioned by the voice of the general council of high priests, covenanted, for that purpose, to act in the name of the church. Okay, somehow I am feeling a lot of PTA type style things in here because I used to serve on the PTA board for a number of years and also was PTA president, and all the lingo, like you have to vote and all the things, the legal stuff is crazy. Like, I don't want to deal with all that stuff. Anyway, so the president of the church, who is also the president of the council, is appointed by revelation and acknowledged to his administration by the voice of the church. And it is according to the dignity of his office that he should preside over the council of the church, and it is his privilege to be assisted by 2 other presidents appointed after the same manner that he himself was appointed. And in case of the absence of one or both of those who are appointed to assist him, he has power to preside over the council without an assistant. And in case he himself is absent, the other presidents have power to preside in his stead, both or either of them. So I feel like it's a lot of trying to make sure that everything is fair, and not just like one-sided. And I think that's what's important to keep in mind, that the Lord is trying to help those who need to be in this council, or need to be heard by this council, so that there's not like just one person being some kind of a judge over them. And so that makes sense to me. So whenever a high council of the Church of Christ is regularly organized according to the foregoing pattern, it shall be the duty of the 12 counselors to cast lots by numbers, and thereby ascertain who of the 12 shall speak first, commencing with number 1 and in succession to number 12. Okay, so I didn't know that everybody would need to voice something. Okay. So verse 13, whenever this council convenes to act upon any case, the 12 counselors shall consider whether it is a difficult one or not. If it is not, 2 only of the counselors shall speak upon it according to the form above written. But if it is thought to be difficult, 4 shall be appointed, and if more difficult, 6. But in no case shall more than 6 be appointed to speak. Holy smokes. Difficult. I don't even know how you would decide the difficulty. Okay, the accused in all cases has a right to 1/2 of the council to prevent insult or injustice. See? And the counselors appointed to speak before the council are to present the case after the evidence is examined in its true light before the council, and every man is to speak according to the equity and justice. Those counselors who draw even numbers, that is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12, are the individuals who are to stand up in behalf of the accused and prevent insult and injustice. In all cases, the accuser and the accused shall have a privilege of speaking for themselves before the council after the evidences are heard, and the counselors who are appointed to speak on the case have finished their remarks. Okay, so it's kind of like this judging system of like, hey, you get to share your story, and then, hey, they're going to share their story, and then you kind of have people that are going to be on like one side and then the other side. Anyway, so, and then it says, after the evidences are heard, the counselors, accusers, and the accused have spoken, the president shall give a decision according to the understanding which he shall have of the case, and call upon 12 counselors to sanction the same by their vote. All right, did I read that? Maybe I forgot 18. In all cases, the accuser and the accused shall have a privilege of speaking for themselves before the council after the evidences are heard and the counselors who are appointed to speak on the case have finished their remarks. Okay, verse 20. But should the remaining counselors who have not spoken, or any of them after hearing the evidences and pleadings, impartially discover an error in the decision of the president, they can manifest it, and the case shall have a rehearing. So it's like court. It's like law. Feels like church law. Like you're going to court, but at church. And if after a careful rehearing, any additional insight or any additional light is shown upon the case, the decision shall be altered accordingly. But in case no additional light is given, the first decision shall stand, the majority of the council having power to determine the same. In case of difficulty respecting doctrine or principle, if there is not a sufficiency written to make the case clear to the minds of the council, the president may inquire and obtain the mind of the Lord by revelation. Okay. And then verse 24, the high priests, when abroad, have power to call and organize a council after the manner of the foregoing to settle difficulties when the parties or either of them shall request it. And the said council of the high priest shall have power to appoint one of their own number to preside over such council for the time being. It shall be the duty of said council to transmit immediately a copy of their proceedings with a full statement of the testimony accompanying their decision to the high council of the seat of the first presidency of the church. Okay. Verse 27, should the parties or either of them be dissatisfied with the decision of said council, they may appeal to the high council of the seat of the first presidency of the church and have a rehearing, which case shall there be conducted according to the former pattern written, as though no such decision had been made. This council of high priests abroad is only to be called on the most difficult cases of church matters, and no common or ordinary case is to be sufficient to call such council. The traveling or located high priests abroad have power to say whether it is necessary to call such council or not. That makes sense, because you're traveling, you don't have all your peeps with you, so it would be hard, right? So they're to have the whole full council there. So, and then it wouldn't be as fair. So do you really want to be in this meeting where not everybody's there? I mean, probably some people might, but verse 30, there is a distinction between the high council or traveling high priest abroad and the traveling high council composed of the 12 apostles in their decisions. From the decision of the former, there can be an appeal, but from the decision of the latter, there cannot. The latter can only be called in question by the general authorities of the church in case of transgression. Resolved that the president or presidents of the seat of the first presidency of the church shall have power to determine whether any such case as may be appealed is justly entitled to a rehearing after examining the appeal and the evidences and statements accompanying it. The 12 counselors then proceeded to cast lots or ballot to ascertain who should speak first, and the following was the result, namely 1, Oliver Cowdery, 2, Joseph Coe, 3, Samuel H. Smith, 4, Luke Johnson, 5, John S. Carter, 6, Sylvester Smith, 7, John Johnson, 8, Orson Hyde, 9, Jared Carter, 10, Joseph Smith Sr., 11, John Smith, and 12, Martin Harris. After prayer, the conference adjourned. Oliver Cowdery, Orson Hyde, clerks. Okay, so that is awesome. Okay, so there's concerning these councils that are held concerning church members in transgression. This is what Elder Russell Ballard has said. The word counsel brings to mind a helpful proceeding, one of love and concern, with the salvation and blessing of the transgressor being the foremost consideration. Members sometimes ask why church disciplinary councils, now called church membership councils, are held. The purpose is threefold: to save the soul of the transgressor, to protect the innocent, and to safeguard the church's purity, integrity, and good name. The First Presidency has instructed that disciplinary councils must be held in cases of murder, incest, or apostasy. A disciplinary council must also be held when a prominent church leader commits a serious transgression, when the transgressor is a predator who may be a threat to other persons, when the person shows a pattern of repeated serious transgressions, when a serious transgression is widely known, and when the transgressor is guilty of serious deceptive practices and false representations or other terms of fraud or dishonesty in business transactions. End quote. Oh, interesting. I love knowing a little bit more about that. Okay, so this is from Elder M. Russell Ballard, A Chance to Start Over, Ensign, September 1990. All right, that is it for section 102. And I'm going to go get the Read It, Live It. All righty. Says sometimes the best way to settle important difficulties is together with others. This is why the Lord established a pattern of counsels. Do you have an important difficulty to settle right now? Counsel with others. I love that. It's so true. It's not that the Lord is trying to make people like shame people or anything like that, but it's to try and bless and help the one who needs that counsel. Okay. That is it for today. Until Doctrine and Covenants section 103. Stay strong, warrior.